Okay, good day. So today we'll be looking at cell referencing. So, introduction: the ability to create formulas in many cells by copying them from one cell is one of the most powerful and time-saving features that we have in Excel. So, for your formula to work properly in the new cells, however, you have to use the right mix of absolute and relative cell references when creating the formula you copy. So this can actually get really complex, especially if you are developing a large model. So in order to be able to call your Excel or spreadsheet a financial model, it must contain formulas. And in order to build formulas, you need to reference cells. It follows therefore that as a financial modeler, you must understand how to reference cells. That is important. So let me take you through the types of cell references and looking at the types of cell references. By default, Excel takes any reference in Excel as a relative cell reference. And so we have three types of cell reference. We have relative cell reference, we have absolute cell reference, and mixed cell reference. So for the relative cell reference, both the column letter and the row number change relative to where the formula is copied. A relative cell reference is simply a cell name, such as your B2, A2, F3, but let's look at the absolute cell reference. Absolute cell reference, the column letter and the row number of a cell name are preceded by dollar signs, such as $B2, $2, $B, $2, $F, $3, $A, $1, to indicate that the cell reference should not change when copied. So let's look at the mixed cell reference. Either the column letter or the row number is preceded by a dollar sign to indicate which of these is to remain unchanged when copied. So you could have $B2 and $B2. These are examples of mixed cell references. So you could have the column or the row being anchored. Now, the shortcut referencing key is the F4 key. So the easiest way to quickly add absolute and mixed cell referencing is to actually press F4 on your keyboard immediately after adding the reference to the formula. So this keyboard shortcut cycles through combinations of relative and absolute referencing. You can repeatedly press F4 after entering the cell address in a formula to cycle through the mixed references. To anchor the row, put dollar sign before the row. To anchor the column, put dollar sign before the column. So for example, you could type equals A2 and then press F4, it will display $A$2. If you press F4 again, it will display A$2. Then if you press F4 again, it will display $A2. And if you press F4 the fourth time, it's going to display A2 as a cell reference. Now, what are the rules for choosing the right cell referencing? 1. If you copy a formula into other cells into the same row, you do not want the column letter of a cell reference in it to change, then that cell address should use mixed references with absolute reference for the column. The second rule, if when you copy a formula into other cells, in the same column, you do not want the row number of a cell reference in it to change, Then that cell address should use mixed references with absolute reference for the row number. Then the third rule would be that if when you copy a formula into other cells anywhere in your model, you do not want the column letter and the row number of the cell reference it needs to change, then that cell address should use absolute reference. To look at it another way, if the value of a variable would come from one particular cell throughout your model, then you should use absolute reference for its cell address. So the last rule is this: for all other cell addresses in formulas, use relative reference. But remember to always check if a copied formula is working properly using hand calculations or other methods. So let's look at also the summary. Let's summarize all that we have been saying. So one of the things you should consider is that maintaining consistency of formulas is a fundamental technique of financial modeling. So when formulas make calculations based on data stored in your spreadsheet, use cell references wherever possible instead of typing the actual data. Typing numbers into formulas is called coding, and it should be avoided unless the numbers are source data, and if so, it should be documented as such. Also, this rule is also important to follow when building your model because it makes your model much easier to update, both for you and others using your model. So if you use cell references instead of hard-coding the numbers into formulas, and you change a value in a cell reference by a formula, the formula automatically recalculates. So that is it. Let's look at an exercise to buttress all that we have been saying. So here, calculate the revenue of a publisher. It has discounts for bookstores, book prices for different years, then the sales volume for each of the years. So calculate revenue at list price. So here we need to multiply the book price. So we are having a relative reference here. Then we're multiplying that with the sales volume, also a relative reference. And so this is BR7, BR10. So when you click enter and you drag this to the right, Ctrl R, and you look at the formula here is BS7 times BS10, so as against what you have here, BR7 and BR10. So it has moved relatively to the cell you copied to, because the cell is BS, this column is BS, this column is BR. So when you copy right, it moves relatively to the column. So that is also exactly what you have here, BT. So BT is the column name. So that's a relative cell reference there. So let's look at this actual revenue after discounts. So here you must give a discount. So we'll say 1 minus the discount rate, 1 minus the discount given. Now this discount rate is in a particular cell. It is not expected to change as we copy across the column, and so there is need for us to use an absolute reference here. So I press F4. F4 once will have $sign before the column letter and $sign before the row number. So this multiply by the book price. So this will give us to like the book the book price after the discounts. So all of this we need to multiply it with the volume. So multiply this with the volume as well. So we are showing an absolute reference for this discounts, and we are saying multiply with the price, then the volume, and so you have this. And when we copy it across, you see this, you have this. So BR4 is not changing, BS7 is changing. If you look at it here, BR4 is what is here, BR7, BR10. So if you go right here, you see that the BR4 is still there, but BR7 has changed to BS7, but that's the corresponding column. So these are relative reference, but this is an absolute reference. It resides in a single cell, and as we copy it across, it applies to each of the years, and so it is not expected to change. So that's an example of an absolute cell reference. Just the same thing we have here for store B. We just have to get the revenue at list price, which is the price, the book price multiplied by the volume. And so this is a relative cell reference. Copy that across. Also here you can see 1 minus the discount, which is this, and we'll press our F4 to have an absolute cell reference. So if you press F4 again, you see that it's only locking the row. Press F4, it's locking the column. Press F4, you are now having a relative cell reference. So F4 circles through the combination of relative and absolute cell reference, so you can see. So we want this, and I can actually multiply this by the revenue at list price, so which is a relative cell reference. This is an absolute cell reference. So we have this, and I can extend this. So this is an example of a relative cell reference. So let's look at the mixed cell reference. How does a mixed cell reference looks like? So this is calculating the return of an investment portfolio. We have return on investment, and we have the amount of investment. So let's calculate the absolute return on investment by multiplying the rate of return by the amount of investment. So here we have 10% multiplied by 1 million naira. So with here, there is need to be careful when writing your cell address. So here we expect that when we copy to the right, it moves from 10% from CC to CD to 15%. So on copyright, we expect the column to move, and so there is no need of anchoring the column. So but when we copy down, we don't want it to move from row 6 to row 7, because row 7 is going to be linking to this place. So there is need to lock the row. So press F4, now it's locking the row. The dollar sign before the row. So that's correct. So multiply that by the investment amount. Now the investment amount, we expect it to change as we copy down. So the rows should change from 7 to 8 to 9 as we copy down. So no need of anchoring the row, but the column. When we copy right, we do not want this to move from 1 million to this cell address. So there is need to anchor the column. So press F4, F4. So this is anchoring the column and allowing the row to move, because the dollar sign is not before the row number. So that is it. I'll say enter. Now this formula is actually consistent. It's left to right consistent. When you drag right, you see it's left to right consistent. When you drag down, the formula still works, you know. So this is how to write formulas as a financial modeler. You must get cell referencing right. Another way of doing this, of replicating this, is to copy all, and put the active cell in an edit mode, and you press Ctrl Enter, and so it populates the all cells at once, you know. So that is that. Thank you very much.